Mark Harwell here with Towers Racing. Today we're going to go over how to properly install braided line fittings and stainless steel hose so you guys don't break them or mess anything up. All right, for one of our first steps, we're going to have to make sure you have some aluminum jaws or some soft pieces that go over the jaw teeth so you don't damage the aluminum fittings here. You can see we're starting out with some new Air-Equip fittings, and we got some Air-Equip hose. We've got our silicone spray, and we've got our anti-seize. The reason you want to use silicone spray instead of WD-40 or any kind of penetrant is because it doesn't seep into the rubber and break it down. Silicone spray will give you the slickness you need to get the items together without hurting the hose. And the anti-seize is to keep the, you can use different types, but to keep the threads right in here from galling up. It'll make it a nice smooth transition so you don't get anything hurt. Once I take our fitting out, you'll see that you have this end here. That'll be your threaded nut, right? And you'll have this other end. Now this is a used fitting where we're just reusing it, right? So this is the one we're going to put anti-seize on, and on the end of our hose is where we're going to put the silicone spray. Once we have our hose out of the package, this is the portion here that we're going to put the silicone spray into. So the very end of this nipple here smoothly goes into the hose because you're fighting two forces, one the threads and one that's going into the hose. First thing we're going to do is take this hose end, this little nut here, and we're going to put it on the end of our braided steel hose. You want to do that is you want to put this on, you want to spin it counterclockwise to get this hose seated all the way up in there. And if you'll look down in there, you'll see when it gets all the way against those threads. So I'll show you again here in a second. All right, now you can see that we've got it all the way, the rubber hose all the way up against those threads. You don't want to go past it because you don't want to get any of the rubber into the threads, but you can see the rubber's down in there. All right, next we're going to put this in the vice jaws, and this will keep it from scratching the surface here. I'm going to get a firm grip on this, not crush it because this is aluminum and you could oblong this thread here in this hole, but I'm going to get a firm grip on it. I'm also going to leave it up just a little bit so I don't actually hit the vice jaws as you've seen some people have done before. So now I'm going to take my fitting here, right, and I'm going to spray silicone spray down in there, and you'll see I'm going to put some anti-seize on these threads, and then I'm going to put it together in a clockwise rotation. A little bit of silicone spray in there. Doesn't need a whole lot, just something to get those hose so they'll go together nice and neat. So once I've got some anti-seize on there, it doesn't take a whole lot, just a little bit. I'm going to put these two down together. Now we're just going to go counterclockwise. I want to push into the hose like so, and then I'm going to go clockwise, on rotation. I'm just going to screw it on basically like a nut. So you see the different ends we have here. You can do this one here. This will keep it from galling up, but these like to strip out and spin a lot. So normally if you get the fixed wrenches like this, you'll be fine. In worst case scenario, you can always use tried and true. I'm going to try to find the wrench that properly fits on here first, which we have. And you can see I'm just going to rotate it in there. Now what I want to do is make sure I don't hit this bottom fitting with this wrench and scratch it. So I'm going to come up just a little bit here. You want to get them to where these two touch each other. You'll see this gap here. Put those together, but you don't have to torque it down. You don't want to break it. It is aluminum. If it galls up on you while you're putting it together, it will shear. So that's why we use anti-seize on it. Now this is a true swivel fitting, this 90 degree here. A lot of them are stationary and they don't swivel. What I mean by that is this still turns, even though this is locked together. Some of your cheaper fittings, they don't do that. They're kind of fixed, which is okay if you're going to use a 90 on one end and a straight on the other. But if you're trying to put two 90s together, that won't work well. All right, so we've bottomed out. You can kind of see these two are together. And that fitting is done. We'll take it out of the vise and go put it on, clean it up and put it on the car. All right, for this portion of our line, we want to go ahead, we put our 90 degree end on, and we're going to mock everything up before we cut the hose. You can see I'm trying to run two lines up to a big carburetor, and I kind of want them to be uniform. So to have that, I kind of mock them up instead of just running them like this, right? We kind of want to run them a little more uniform. So I like to come down here like this, hard to do with one hand, and then kind of run it that way. So the lines I can put together, push that into there like said, and that'll look a little more uniformed as they come together. So I'm going to mark my line here and then cut it, and I'll show you guys how to cut that. But this is pretty much how I'm going to come out of my regulator and go into the carb. Again, this is all mocked up, so nothing's permanent. It's just to get a start. So once I get my carburetor lines, then I can start hooking up my fuel lines and then my NOS lines for the dual stage nitrous kit. So now I'm going to take this line, I'm pinched it where I'm going to mark it. So I'm going to use that Sharpie to mark where I want to cut it, and then I'll show you guys how to tape it and cut it. So now you see I've kind of marked the line a little bit. You can see the darkened area, not a great marker, but it's enough for me to show where I'm going to tape it up. Some people like to use different types of tapes. I like to have this put on by using good old duct tape. You can use different types. I just happen to have black laying around. Now what I'm going to do, I'm going to split the difference here. So in this tape, I'm going to kind of put it right in the middle here, because I'm going to cut down this line. So I don't want it offset one way or the other. I want it right in the middle. When putting this line on, I'm going to again get it in the middle the best I can, and I'm going to wrap it really tight around here. So what happens when I cut this line, these braided try to come undone and they'll fray, and they'll actually poke you and make it really hard to get into that fitting we did earlier. I want to keep those braided line wires from cutting me. And of course, I'm just going to pull it apart like that. So now I'm going to end up with this. I'm going to cut right down the middle of that, and then we'll be able to unravel this, put this in the tube nut or the AN hose in nut, and get it adhered to it. For those of you who don't have a bandsaw available to cut this, you can use a hacksaw and a vise, but you want to make sure this hose isn't curved. It must be as straight as possible. I'm going to roll the hose so that it'll cut all the way across. All right, so now that I've got my end on, or cut, you can see it's kind of nice and neat. I'm going to take my nut off of my hose end. I've got to get it on there, but I can't do it with the tape, so I have to take the tape off. And the goal here is not to have it come unraveled. So that's what the end looks like. Now we're going to put this nut on, and again we're going to go counterclockwise. So I'm going to catch this in here the best I can. You see how I feed it in here? I'm going to push my thumb in here. I'm going to rotate counterclockwise. Push down at the same time, rotate counterclockwise. And all I did was go counterclockwise and push down on the hose. So now we've got that, so we're going to load this back up into our vise jaws and start putting the hose on. All right, for this next step, we're going to do what we did earlier in the video. I'm going to take the hose end nut, secure it into our vise jaws, and spray some silicone spray in there for the hose. I'm going to take this and I'm going to put some anti-seize on it, and then we'll merge the two again. I've got my two pieces. I'm going to push the hose in there, and then I'm going to thread this on clockwise like a standard nut and bolt setup. I'm going to go down as far as I can with that, and then I'm going to have to use my other fittings. Go into it here. I don't like the feel of this. It's a little loose, so I'm going to put this down. And again, I'm trying to get these two surfaces here to close that gap. Right? That's when it's seated. I don't have to torque it past that, I just need them to seat. All right, so now I've got these two seated together. I'm going to take it out of the vise jaws, and we'll run it over to our car and test fit it. All right, so earlier we put this together, we could see this swivels, so I'm going to test fit this again. It's all in mock-up. So I'll take this and screw it onto the end of this regulator fitting. Most of these products were provided to me by the owner of the car. I'm just putting the hose and the hose ends on for him. And like I said earlier, we like to mock it all up first. And this hose is pretty much permanent, except for final installation. We will put a little bit of, you can use thread locker on the threads to keep them on permanently, to keep them from vibrating off or whatnot. So now I've got that line, and you can see I've got my other mock-up line here. See, they kind of go together now and line up. So I've got I'm going to finish this feed in, and then have my feed out to the carburetor. Now we're going to mock up our second line, and what I like to do here is put it on the other end, take the fitting off of here. Instead of guessing, you can just lay this thing in here just right, so everything kind of lines up together and it looks kind of smooth when you're all said and done. It'll look a little bit better when I hold it in both hands. And I want to run this right into here, and you can see I've made a mark right here to where I hold this hose up, it's at the end of that fitting, right? So that's when I cut it, it'll be shaped similar to that. A little different since I'm holding it with my hand, but we want to kind of run them parallel together as far as we can, and then they branch out. It gives a little smoother and clean appearance. And once I'm done putting all these lines together, I'm definitely going to blow the hoses out with an air gun before I ever put them permanently on the car to get any debris or anything that may have gotten in the lines from the shipping or from the factory out. Definitely don't want to do it while it's on the car. Since this fitting here is really thin here, and you're trying to just catch this little bitty piece here that doesn't spin and screw it into this when you're tightening down, a lot of times you can invert it like this, right? Hold this with your vice jaws, right? And you can kind of see that it's better held there. And then I can turn this piece here into it. I don't want to mar it up. That's why I want to use an aluminum wrench, such as this. And I grab this in here. Now a lot of these wrenches, they kind of flare out. You can see this one's kind of flared out at the end here. They're wider than they used to be. After time, they just kind of do that and they get worn. You can use basic old crescent wrench if you want to. It does mar it up a little bit. There's all kinds of different tricks you can do, but really if you just try to do it one time, it won't hurt it as bad. And also you can come back with a little bit of a black Sharpie and fill in anything that may or may not have gotten damaged when you put it together. Or if it's red or blue, you can do the same. So I'm gonna do this. I'm holding it here with this piece here. I'm turning it with this aluminum hose here until I get it all done. Now as you can see, I've got this all the way on there. A little dirty, but we'll clean this up. This little marring will come off with my fingers, and then we'll get this piece all taken care of. All right, so our final installation here will be hooking into this, hooking the other end into the regulator here after I've blown it all out, and we'll make a final mock-up, and then we'll come back once we have all of the lines and tighten them up permanently. All right, so this final installment, you can see I've mocked this up. This regulator the customer had on here didn't have a port for me to check the pressure, so I had to go ahead and purchase one of these line adapters with an 1/8 inch hole in it so I could put on his pressure gauge. We used as many of his old fittings as we could, saving some money, but we've got some new lines and some new fittings here. And you can see that goes right up to the carburetor. Those are new carburetor fittings as well. There's longer ones, but they interfered with this nitrous plate, so we got the shortest ones we could find, which I think are -8 to 7/8, if I'm not mistaken. And the same up here. And we just kind of run the line all the way there, so they'll look nice and uniform together. Right, and now I'm going to start running regulator lines and our nitrous fuel lines, and then eventually our nitrous cold lines, which are here in the blue. We'll try to keep those blue instead of black. So we'll run all our fuel in black, and then we'll run all of our nitrous in blue, if possible. Might be blue and red. So hope that helps out. This is just a dual stage nitrous kit we're working on a Dominator with on a small block. This is just one of the ways to do it. There's many other ways, and you can see down there we're going to start working on teeing that line there to run both solenoids on this dual stage kit. So I hope this helps, and that's Towers Racing tip for today.